Today's episode is a bit different. If you are a Stranger Things fan, you are familiar with the creepy Penhurst hospital that Victor Creel was kept in. But did you know that there was a real Penhurst asylum that Stranger Things was inspired from? The incidents that took place behind the walls of this asylum were so horrific that years later, people say they can hear the ghosts of the poorly tortured souls in the walls. So, what exactly happened to turn Penhurst into one of America's most haunted places? Listen on. Hello and welcome to the 3 AM Fear podcast. I'm Nikita Ferrao, mystery and thriller author. On this podcast, I talk about real crimes and real people. Due to the graphic nature of some of this content, listener discretion is advised. You can find the episode show notes on my website 3amfear.com. Let's get started. Penhurst is said to be one of the most haunted places in America. And here's why. Penhurst has a very tragic history associated with it. Located in Spring City, Pennsylvania, Penhurst was opened in 1908 as the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. On January 23, 1903, Penhurst State School was commissioned as the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. Penhurst was subjected to a ton of controversy throughout its history, and this is mainly due to the abuse and neglect of its patient. It finally closed down in December 1987. Which once was created with the intention to help the feeble-minded and epileptic, turned into a living nightmare. The first patient was admitted on 27 November 1908. It was the first of many as Penhurst was already overcrowded within 4 years of opening. Given the name as an institution for the feeble-minded and epileptic, you would think that all the patients there would have some sort of serious neurological issues. But that was not the case. Penhurst was supposed to be a safe space for patients to come in and recover, but this was not all the people that Penhurst catered to. They also took in immigrants, criminals, and orphans. In short, anyone who could not be placed anywhere else in the country was put in Penhurst. Back in the day, there weren't a lot of awareness regarding mental health, so anyone who had ADHD or ADD would be put in Penhurst. In short, you could say that anyone with any sort of a problem was put in Penhurst. This was the plan from the start, and it was doomed. The Penhurst patients were grouped into general categories. Mental category, under which one was either listed as an imbecile or insane, and physical category, where the patient could either be declared as epileptic or healthy. Like any other state institute, Penhurst ran on its own. It had its own power plant, own police station, hospital, morgue, barber shop, firehouse, produced its own food, and like any other additional things that were required, they were brought in by rail. By the 1960s, Penhurst was open for about 50 years and was now housing about 2,791 people, which was 900 people more than what the building could handle. In 1968, nearly 60 years after Penhurst opened, a man named Bill Baldini ran a 5-part series that was an expose on the conditions that were going on in Penhurst at that time. This expose was aired on Philadelphia TV 10, and the name of the series was Suffer the Little Children. You can check it out online. The series is available on certain websites, and I even saw it on YouTube. It has everything about what's happening in Penhurst at that time. The person even interviewed a few of the patients, and just watching the series felt like a nightmare. I don't even want to imagine what went through the patients who were living there at that time. The then in charge doctor was Dr. Fear. I mean, his deeds are right there in his name. During Baldini's segment, Dr. Fear admitted to doing some of the most unimaginable scary things one would do with a patient. He confessed to injecting one patient with an injection which could cause that patient unimaginable pain. And when asked, he justified by saying that this would not do any damage to the body. It's just pain, no damage to the body. I don't get it. The segment further went on to show disturbing segments of the living situations in Penhurst. The patients were shown bound by straps to adult-sized crib beds. The inmates were shown rocking, twitching, or even pacing. Some of the patients seemed mentally unstable or were disabled, but many looked as if someone had just sucked the life out of them. As per Dr. Fear, here are some of the cruel punishments that would be carried out. If a patient bit someone for the first time, he or she would be warned. But if it happened again, then the patient would be sent to a dentist and then the patient's teeth would be pulled out. Thousands of teeth were removed by the dentist on a regular basis. Some have even said that they have seen a rusty dentist chair sitting there in the tunnels beneath the Penhurst complex. When one of the patients was asked about the interviewer what he would like the most in the world, he said, quote, "to get out of Penhurst," end quote. A young boy, John, aka Johnny, was mentioned by Dr. Fear as one of the most notorious kids. When the interviewer spoke to Johnny, he seemed normal and he even mentioned that he was not happy with the place. As per Dr. Fear's words, Johnny was not mentally stable, but the clip with Johnny's interview said otherwise. When confronted, Dr. Fear maintained his statement and continued to say that Johnny was one of the delinquents. I saw the clip and it seemed like Johnny was fine, so I don't know why Dr. Fear would say something like that. It was quite evident from Dr. Fear's words that he believed that his treatments were exactly what Johnny needed. And despite the fact that there seemed to be nothing wrong with the boy, he still continued. Penhurst's patients were not only ill-treated, but many of them even died under the care of their staff. The patients at Penhurst were called as children, even though a majority of them were adults. In an interview with the Institute on Disabilities at Temple University, Bill Baldini claimed that the conditions at Penhurst were so bad that he and his crew could not bear filming it for 5 straight days. They had to be given breaks, rests so they could recharge and come back. This interview left a scar in the minds of the crew members. Baldini also claimed that when he brought his footage back on the first day of shooting, his news director stated that he thought Baldini was just exaggerating about the conditions at Penhurst. He even said that after the first footage release, the public reaction was so strong that he was determined to go back and film some more. The documentary also showed that some of the biggest zoos spent about $7.15 per day on their animals, while Penhurst only spent about $5.90 per day on their patients. You can see the gap. After this segment, Penhurst admitted to their shortcomings. They confessed that their building was falling apart, they had a very bad financial situation, their budget was short of whopping $4 million. At the time of the show's airing, there were 9 medical doctors and 11 teachers. And this was all for almost 3,000 patients. Of the patients who were in Penhurst, only 200 were given an opportunity to get involved in activities that helped them. These could include orchestra training, band practice, and baseball. The fact is that most of Penhurst patients were not even that mentally retarded to be there in the first place. Some of them were autistic, some had some serious physical impairments, some had certain learning disabilities, while some were just teens who were acting out. Sometimes it was just overwhelmed parents who just wanted to drop their children off to Penhurst and they thought that Penhurst could solve all their problems or fix them. But these were just teens who were going through a phase. It was said that if anyone situated in the high-functioning ward acted out, that person would immediately be sent to the low-functioning ward. And this low-functioning ward was also called as the punishment ward. Most of the kids who acted out weren't bad, they were just victims of bullies. They were either trying to protect themselves against bullies or just getting back at them. Either ways, it was often the victims who were punished for acting out rather than the bullies who instigated these fights in the first place. It was not that the parents didn't come to meet their children or family members didn't come to visit the ones who were enrolled here. They did. And they were shocked to see what was happening. But unfortunately, once a person was in Penhurst, there is very less you can do about it. The segment sent a ball rolling, causing Penhurst's reputation to rapidly go down. But unfortunately, even after this release, Penhurst would not be immediately shut. It was shut in 1987, 19 years after the segment was aired. After the Penhurst expose, there were some improvements in other institutes, so they do not suffer the same fate as Penhurst. As said before, Penhurst not only took in sick patients but also had some healthy people living under their roof. These people or patients helped a lot in whatever was needed. Some who were good were allowed to work there and help other patients who were more sick. Some of the staff members even came on their day off to help these patients. In 1974, Terry Lee Halderman, a resident of Penhurst, filed a class action lawsuit against Penhurst State School and Hospital while at the hospital. He had suffered about 40 injuries including cracked teeth, broken jaw, fractured fingers, and more. After hearing his situation, it was stated that the conditions at Penhurst were not only dangerous, but the residents were physically abused and there were less staff. Many members suffered severely, with some even dying. This facility became so popular with its malpractice that at one point, papers started calling it, quote, the shame of Pennsylvania, end quote. In his autobiography, former resident Roland Jones described Penhurst as something that smelled like doghouse. His exact words were, quote, it just smells like feces. Rats crawling, roaches crawling all over, feces and pee on the floor, flies coming in the windows, end quote. In 1984, the final settlement of Penhurst versus Halderman called for the closure of Penhurst, and in 1987, Penhurst was shut down. Dr. Fear was given a 30-day suspension, but despite all this, he still showed no sign of remorse. According to him, whatever he was doing was right, and for the better of his patients. This is nothing compared to what went through behind these walls. The poor souls who once stayed here and suffered are still here after their death. In 2008, a businessman named Richard purchased Penhurst. In 2010, Penhurst was opened to the public as a Halloween attraction named Penhurst Asylum. The haunted house is a collaboration with Randy Bates, who also runs another haunted house in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania, called Bates Motel and Haunted Hayride. The institute was originally going to be named as Penhurst Institute of Fear, but was later changed to Penhurst Asylum. The location carries with it an ominous feeling, maybe because of the many lives that were lost here. There have said to be a lot of screams and tears associated with these walls. After all, the very existence of Penhurst serves as a memory and reminder of how cruel our society is towards its own members. As an abandoned facility, Penhurst also carries with it an eerie look. It was also a mental asylum, so it adds to the fear. Over the years, a number of paranormal investigations have been done. One of Penhurst's most haunted areas are the underground tunnels. There have been some activity reported here. The tunnel system is filled with paint and wall art. Penhurst is so popular that an author, Tamara Lawrence, who worked at the Mayflower building in 2011, wrote a book about it. She mentioned the 4 spirits that haunt the building. The first is the ghost of a child named Howie who loves playing with an airplane. The second is a shadow man said to be repeatedly seen in the common room or the bathroom. One couple even said his name is Fisher, which can be found on the walls of one of the ceiling. This shadow man has been caught several times on cameras and by many investigators. I don't know how much of that is true. The third is the spirit of a little girl seen in different spots in second floor. The fourth ghost is an angry nurse. Many people have said to have been stabbed by a needle in the art room. During Weird NJ's tour of Penhurst, here are some of their findings. Quaker Building. Numerous shadows have been said to appear and disappear at will. These include the shadows of a small female child with long black hair, a hunched over presence with long dangling arms, and the upper portion of bodies looking over or around obstacles. Sometimes the rocking chair would move on its own, and at times the door too would make a creaking sound. The investigator was shoved from behind with strong force and was even scratched on the arm by an unknown object. Limerick Building. A woman in nurse's uniform was seen here by a firefighter, a police officer, and a marine. Mayflower Building. A shadow was seen multiple times. Tinicum Building. Multiple EVPs. Investigator had their legs touched. Philadelphia Building. Loud sounds and voices were heard coming from the building. Administration Building. Multiple voices were heard at various times. There was even an incident of a toilet flushing on its own, even though the building has no running water or bathroom fixtures. Hershey Building. A child's voice was heard on the third floor. These are just some of the incidents recorded in history. How much of this is true or not, we can't say. It's sad to imagine the plight of these patients at Penhurst. If there is a presence at Penhurst, then it is no surprise because of what the patients went through. That physical, emotional, and mental torture, including rape of several patients by the staff members. And how can we forget Dr. Fear, who loved experimenting on those poor souls? It wouldn't be surprising if some of those spirits are still wandering around the property. Do you believe in ghosts? Would you want to visit Penhurst? Why or why not? That's it for the day. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to follow me on social media, especially Instagram. The links are in my description box. You can also find the episode show notes on my website 3amfear.com. If you love reading thrillers, you can now check out my free ebook available on my website. Once again, thank you so much for being here today and see you next week. Have a great week and stay safe out there.